ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste, my dear friends. This is video number 18 on Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna Parmahamsa. This video number 18 starts with Divine Mother is the universal consciousness. The Divine Mother revealed to me in the Kali temple that it was she who had become everything. She showed me that everything was full of consciousness. The image was consciousness, the altar was consciousness, the water vessels were consciousness, the door sill was consciousness, the marble floor was consciousness, all was consciousness. I found everything inside the room soaked as it were in bliss, the bliss of Sat Chit Ananda. I saw a wicked man in front of the Kali temple, but in him also I saw the power of the Divine Mother vibrating. That was why I fed a cat with the food that was to be offered to the Divine Mother. I clearly perceived that the Divine Mother herself had become everything, even the cat. The manager of the temple garden wrote to Mathur Babu saying that I was feeding the cat with the offering intended for the Divine Mother. But Mathur Babu had insight into the state of my mind. He wrote back to the manager, let him do whatever he likes. You must not say anything to him. After realizing God, one sees all this aright, that is, He who has become the universe, living beings, and the 24 cosmic principles. But what remains when God completely effaces the ego cannot be described in words. As Ram Prasad said in one of his songs, then alone will you know whether you are good or I am good. I get into even that state now and then. A man sees a thing in one way through reasoning and in altogether different way when God Himself shows it to him. Monday, December 17, 1883. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. Sri Ramakrishna was in his room with M when Dr. Madhu arrived and sat down beside the master on the small couch. He was an elderly man and full of wit. He used to visit the master when the latter felt indisposed. Master, the whole thing in a nutshell is that one must develop ecstatic love for Satchitananda. What kind of love? How should one love God? Gauri used to say that one must become like Sita to understand Rama, like Bhagavati, the Divine Mother, to understand Bhagavan Shiva. One must practice austerity as Bhagavati did in order to attain Shiva. One must cultivate the attitude of Prakriti in order to realize Purusha, the attitude of a friend, a handmaid, or a mother. I saw Sita in a vision. I found that her entire mind was concentrated on Rama. She was totally indifferent to everything: her hands, her feet, her clothes, her jewels. It seemed that Rama had filled every bit of her life and she could not remain alive without Rama. M. Yes, sir, she was mad with love for Rama. Master, mad? That is the word. One must become mad with love in order to realize God. But that love is not possible if the mind dwells on woman and gold. Sex life with a woman. What happiness is there in that? The realization of God gives 10 million times more happiness. Gauri used to say that when a man attains ecstatic love of God, all the pores of the skin, even the roots of the hair, become like so many sexual organs, and in every pore the aspirant enjoys the happiness of communion with the Atma. One must call on God with a longing heart. One must learn from the Guru how God can be realized. Only if the Guru himself has attained perfect knowledge can he show the way. A man gets rid of all desires when he has perfect knowledge. He becomes like a child 5 years old. Sages like Dattaraya and Jadabharta had the nature of a child, and one bears about them. But there were many others like them that the world does not hear about. Master, yes, the Jnani gets rid of all desire. If any is left, it does not hurt him. At the touch of the philosopher's stone, the sword is transformed into gold. Then that sword cannot do any killing. Just so, the Jnani keeps only a semblance of anger and passion. They are anger and passion only in name and cannot injure him. And yes, sir, the Jnani goes beyond the three gunas, as you say. He is not under the control of any of the gunas, sattva, rajas, or tamas. All these three are so many robbers, as it were, masters. Yes, one must assimilate that. And in this world, there are perhaps not more than 3 or 4 men of perfect knowledge, master. Why do you say that? One sees many holy men and sannyasis in the monasteries of Upper India. And well, I too can become a sannyasi like one of those. The master fixed his gaze on M and said, "By renounce everything, M. What can a man achieve unless he gets rid of Maya? What will a man gain by merely being a sannyasi if he cannot subdue Maya?" Both remained silent a few minutes. M. Sir, what is the nature of the divine love transcending the three gunas? Master, attaining that love, the devotee sees everything full of spirit and consciousness. To him, Krishna is consciousness and his sacred abode is also consciousness. The devotee too is consciousness. Everything is consciousness. Very few people attain such love. Dr. Madhu, the love transcending the three gunas means, in other words, that the devotee is not under the control of any of the gunas. Master smiling, yes, That's it. He becomes like a child, 5 years old, not under the control of any of the gunas. The master was resting after his noon meal. Mani Malik arrived and saluted him. Sri Ramakrishna remained lying on the couch and said a word or two to Mani. Mani, I hear you visited Krishna, Keshav Sen, master. Yes, how is he now, Mani? He has not recovered to any extent from his illness. Master, I found him to be very rajasic. I had to wait a long time before I could see him. The master sat upon the couch and continued his conversation with the devotees. Master to M. I became mad for Rama. I used to walk about carrying an image of Ramlala given to me by a monk. I bathed it, fed it, and laid it down to sleep. I carried it wherever I went. I became mad for Ramlala. Chapter 17, M at Dakshineswar, Part 1. Tuesday, December 18, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna was seated in his room with his devotees. He spoke highly of Devendranath Tagore's love of God and renunciation, and then said, pointing to Rakhal and the other young devotees, Devendra is a good man, but blessed indeed are those young aspirants who, like Sukadeva, practice renunciation from their very boyhood and think of God day and night without being involved in worldly life. Nature of worldly people. The worldly man always has some desire or other, though at times he shows much devotion to God. Once Mathur Babu was entangled in a lawsuit. He said to me in the shrine of Kali, Sir, please offer this flower to the Divine Mother. I offered it unsuspectingly, but he firmly believed that he would attain his objective if I offered the flower. What devotion Rafi's mother had, how often she used to come here and how much she served me. She was a Vaishnava. One day she noticed that I ate the food offered at the Kali temple and that stopped her coming. Her devotion to God was one-sided. It is not possible to understand a person right away. It was a winter morning and the master was sitting near the east door of his room, wrapped in his moleskin shawl. He looked at the sun and suddenly went into samadhi. His eyes stopped blinking and he lost all consciousness of the outer world. After a long time, he came down to the plane of the sense world. Rakhal, Hazra, M, and other devotees were seated near him. Master to Hazra. The state of Samadhi is certainly inspired by love. Once at Swan they arranged a kirtan at Natwar Goswami's house. There I had a vision of Krishna and the gopis of Vrindavan. I felt that my subtle body was walking at Krishna's heels. I went into Samadhi when similar devotional songs were sung at the Hari Sabha in Jora Sanko in Calcutta. That day they feared I might give up the body. After the master had finished his bath, he again spoke of the ecstatic love of the gopis. He said to him and the other devotees, one should accept the fervent attachment of the gopis to their beloved Krishna. Sing songs like this. Tell me, friend, how far is the grove where Krishna, my beloved, dwells? His fragrance reaches me even here, but I am tired and can walk no further. Again he said, I am not going home, O friend, for there it is hard for me to chant my Krishna's name. Sri Ramakrishna had vowed to offer green coconut and sugar to Siddheswari, the Divine Mother, for Rakhal's welfare. He asked M whether he would pay for the offerings. That afternoon, the master, accompanied by M, Rakhal, and some other devotees, set out in a carriage for the temple of Siddheswari in Calcutta. On the way, the offerings were purchased. On reaching the temple, the master asked the devotees to offer the fruit and sugar to the Divine Mother. They saw the priests and their friends playing cards in the temple. Sri Ramakrishna said, to play cards in a temple, one should think of God here. From the temple, the master went to Jadu Malik's house. Jadu was surrounded by his admirers, well dressed dandies. He welcomed the master. Master with a smile, why do you keep so many clowns and flatterers with you? Jadu smiling, that you may liberate them. Laughter. Master, flatterers think that the rich man will loosen his purse strings for them, but it is very difficult to get anything from him. Once a jackal saw a bullock and would not give up his company. The bullock roamed about and the jackal followed him. The jackal thought, there hang the bullock's testicles. Some time or the other they will drop to the ground and I shall eat them. When the bullock slept on the ground, the jackal lay down too, and when the bullock moved about, the jackal followed him. Many days passed in this way, but the bullock's testicles still clung to his body. The jackal went away disappointed. Oh, laugh! That also happens to flatterers. Jadu and his mother served refreshments to Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees. Wednesday, December 19, 1883. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to M. Near the bell tree at Dakshineswar, this tree under which the master had practiced the most austere sadhana stood in the northern end of the temple garden. Farther north ran a high wall, and just outside was the government magazine. West of the bell tree was a row of tall pines that rustled in the wind. Below the trees flowed the Ganges, and to the south could be seen the sacred grove of the Panchavati. The dense trees and underbrush hid the temples. No noise of the outside world reached the bell tree. Master to M. But one cannot realize God without renouncing woman and gold. M. Why did not Vasishtha say to Rama, O Rama, you may renounce the world if the world is outside God? Master smiling, he said that to Rama so that Rama might destroy Ramana. Rama accepted the life of a householder and married to fulfill that mission. And stood there like a log, stunned and speechless. Sri Ramakrishna went to the Panchavati on his way back to his room and accompanied him. It was then about 10 o'clock. Path of Impersonal God. M. Sir, is there no spiritual discipline leading to realization of the impersonal God? Master, yes, there is, but the path is extremely difficult. After intense austerities, the rishis of olden times realized God as their innermost consciousness and experienced the real nature of Brahma. But how hard they had to work! They went out of their dwellings in the early morning and all day practiced austerities and meditation. Returning home at nightfall, they took a light supper of fruit and roots. But an aspirant cannot succeed in this form of spiritual discipline if his mind is stained with worldliness even in the slightest degree. The mind must withdraw totally from all objects of form, taste, smell, touch, and sound. Only thus does it become pure. The pure mind is the same as the pure Atma, but such a mind must be altogether free from woman and gold. When it becomes pure, one has another experience. One realizes God alone is the doer and I am his instrument. One does not feel oneself to be absolutely necessary to others either in their misery or in their happiness. Once a wicked man beat into unconsciousness a monk who lived in a monastery. On regaining consciousness, he was asked by his friends, who is feeding you milk? The monk said, he who beat me is now feeding me. And yes, sir, I know that story. Obstacles to Samadhi. Master, it is not enough to know it. One must assimilate its meaning. It is the thought of worldly objects that prevents the mind from going into Samadhi. One becomes established in Samadhi when one is completely rid of worldliness. It is possible for me to give up the body in Samadhi, but I have a slight desire to enjoy the love of God and the company of His devotees. Therefore, I pay a little attention to my body. There is another kind of samadhi called Unmana Samadhi. One attains it by suddenly gathering the dispersed mind. You understand what that is, don't you? And yes, sir. Master, yes. It is the sudden withdrawal of the dispersed mind to the ideal. But that samadhi does not last long. Worldly thoughts intrude and destroy it. The yogi slips down from his yoga. At Kamarpukur, I have seen the mongoose living in its hole up in the wall. It feels snug there. Sometimes people tie a brick to its tail. Then the pull of the brick makes it come out of its hole. Every time the mongoose tries to be comfortable inside the hole, it has to come out because of the pull of the brick. Such is the effect of brooding on worldly objects that it makes the yogi stray from the path of yoga. Worldly people may now and then experience samadhi. The lotus blooms, no doubt, when the sun is up, but its petals close again when the sun is covered by a cloud. Worldly thought is the cloud. And is not it possible to develop both jnana and bhakti by the practice of spiritual discipline? Master, through the path of bhakti, a man may attain them both. If it is necessary, God gives him the knowledge of Brahma, but a highly qualified aspirant may develop both jnana and bhakti at the same time. Such is the case with the Iswara Kotis, Chaitanya for example. But the case of ordinary devotees is different. There are five kinds of light: the light of a lamp, the light of various kinds of fire, the light of the moon, the light of the sun, and lastly, the combined light of the sun and the moon. Bhakti is the light of the moon and jnana the light of the sun. Sometimes it is seen that the sun has hardly set when the moon rises in the sky. In an incarnation of God, one sees at the same time the sun of knowledge and the moon of love. Can everyone, by the mere wish, develop knowledge and love at the same time? It depends on the person. One bamboo is more hollow than another. It is possible for all to comprehend the nature of God. Can a one seer pot hold 5 seers of milk? But what about the grace of God? Through His grace is small, through His grace a camel can pass through the the eye of a needle. Master, but it is possible to obtain God's grace just like that. A beggar may get a penny if he asks for it, but suppose he asks you right off for his train fare, how about that? M stood silent. The master too remained silent. Suddenly he said, yes, it is true. Through the grace of God, some may get both jnana and bhakti. And saluted the master and went back to the bale tree. At midday, finding that M had not yet returned, Sri Ramakrishna started towards the bale tree, but on reaching the Panchavati, he met M carrying his prayer carpet and water jug, and saluted the master. Sri Ramakrishna said to M, I was coming to look for you. Because of your delay, I thought you might have scaled the wall and run away. I watched your eyes this morning and felt apprehensive lest you should go away like Narayana Sastri. Then I said to myself, no, he won't run away. He thinks a great deal before doing anything. The same night the master talked to M. Rakhal, Latu, Haris, and a few other devotees. Master to M. Some people give a metaphysical interpretation of the Vrindavan episode of Sri Krishna's life. What do you say about it? And there are various opinions. What if there are? You have told us the story of Bhishma Deva's weeping on his bed of arrows because he could not understand anything of God's way. Again, you have told us that Hanuman used to say, I don't know anything about the day of the week, the position of the stars, and so forth. I only meditate on Rama. Further, you have said to us what in the last analysis there are two things only, Brahma and its power. You have also said that after the attainment of Brahmajnana, a man realizes these two to be one, the one that has no two. Master, yes, that is true. Your ideal is to reach the goal. You may reach it by going either through a thorny forest or along a good road. Diverse opinions certainly exist. Nagata used to say that the monks could not be feasted because of the diversity of their views. Once a feast was arranged for the sannyasis, monks belonging to many sects were invited. Everyone claimed that his sect should be fed first, but no conclusion could be arrived at. At last they all went away and the food had to be given to the prostitutes. And Totapri was indeed a great soul. Master, but Hazra says he was an ordinary man. There is no use in discussing these things. Everyone says that his watch alone gives the correct time. You see, Narayan Shastri developed a spirit of intense renunciation. He was a great scholar. He gave up his wife and went away. A man attains yoga when he completely effaces woman and gold from his mind. With some, the characteristics of the yogi are well marked. I shall have to tell you something of the six centers. The mind of the yogi passes through these, and he realizes God through his grace. Have you heard of the six centers? And these are the seven planes of the Vedanta. Master, not the Vedanta but the Vedas. Do you know what the six centers are like? They are the lotuses in the subtle body. The yogis see them. They are like the fruits and leaves of a wax tree. And yes, sir, the yogis can perceive them. I have read that there is a kind of glass through which a tiny object looks very big. Likewise, through yoga, one can see those subtle lotuses. Following Sri Ramakrishna's direction and spent the night in the hut at the Panchavati. In the early hours of the morning, he was singing alone. I am without the least benefit of prayer and austerity, O Lord. I am the lowliest of the lowly. Make me pure with thy hallowed touch. One by one I pass my days in hope of reaching thy lotus feet. But thee, alas, I have not found. Suddenly Anne glanced toward the window and saw the master standing there. Sri Ramakrishna's eyes became heavy with tears as Anne sang the line, I am the lowliest of the lowly, makes me pure with thy hallowed touch. And saying again, I shall put on the ochre robe and earrings made of conch shell. Thus, in the garb of a yogini, from place to place I shall wander till I have found my cruel Hari. And so that the master was walking with Rakhal. Friday, December 21, 1883. In the morning, the master and M were conversing alone under the bale tree. The master told him many secrets of spiritual discipline, exhorting him to renounce woman and gold. He further said that the mind at times becomes one's guru. After his midday meal, the master went to the Panchavati wearing a beautiful yellow robe. Two or three Vaishnava monks were thus clad in the dress of their sect. In the afternoon, a monk belonging to the sect of Nanak arrived. He was a worshipper of the formless God. Sri Ramakrishna asked him to meditate as well on God with form. The master said to him, dive deep, one does not get the precious gems by merely floating on the surface. God is without form, no doubt, but He also has form. By meditating on God with form, one speedily acquires devotion. Then one can meditate on the formless God. It is like throwing a letter away after learning its contents and then setting out to follow its instructions. Saturday, December 22, 1883. Rakhal, Haris, M. and Lattu had been staying with Sri Ramakrishna at Dakshineshwar. About 9 o'clock in the morning, the master was sitting with them on the southeast veranda of his room when Balram's father and Devendra Ghosh of Shamapukur arrived. A devotee, sir, how does one obtain love for God? Master, go forward. The king dwells beyond the 7 gates. You can see him only after passing through all the gates. At the time of the installation of Annapurna at Chanak, I said to Dwarika Babu, large fish live in the deep water of a big lake. Throw some spiced bait into the water, then the fish will come. Attracted by its smell, now and then they will make the water splash. Devotion and ecstatic love are like the spiced bait. Divine incarnation. God sports in the world as man. He incarnates himself as man, as in the case of Krishna, Rama, and Chaitanya. Once I said to Keshav, the greatest manifestation of God is in man. There are small holes in the bulk of a field where crabs and fish accumulates in the rainy season. If you want to find them, you must seek them in the holes. If you seek God, you must seek Him in the incarnations. The Divine Mother of the universe manifests herself through the 3.5 cubit man. There is a song that says, O Mother, what a machine is this that thou hast made? What pranks thou played with this toy? 3.5 cubits high. One needs spiritual practice in order to know God and recognize divine incarnations. Big fish live in the large lake, but to see them must throw spiced bait beat in the water. There is butter in milk, but one must churn the milk to get it. There is oil in mustard seed, but one must press the seed to extract the oil. Devotee, has God form or is he formless? Master, wait, wait. First of all, you must go to Calcutta, then only will you know where the Maidan, the Asiatic Society and the Bengal Bank are located. If you want to go to the Brahmin quarter of Khardaha, you must first of all go to Khardaha. Why should it not be possible to practice the discipline of the formless God? But it is very difficult to follow that path. One cannot follow it without renouncing woman and gold. There must be complete renunciation, both inner and outer. You cannot succeed in this path if you have the slightest trace of worldliness. It is easy to worship God with form, but it is not easy as all that. One should not discuss the discipline of the impersonal God or the path of knowledge with a bhakta. Through great effort, perhaps he is just cultivating a little devotion. You will enjoy it if you explain away everything as a mere dream. Kabir was a worshipper of the impersonal God. He did not believe in Shiva, Kali, or Krishna. He used to make fun of them and say that Kali lived on the offerings of rice and banana, and that Krishna danced like a monkey when the gopis clapped their hands or laughed. One who worships God without form perhaps sees at first the deity with 10 arms, then the deity with 4 arms, then the baby Krishna with 2 arms. At last he sees the individual light and merges in it. It is said that sages like Dattatreya and Jadabharta did not return to the relative plane after having the vision of Brahma. According to some people, Sukadeva tasted only a drop of that ocean of Brahma consciousness. He saw and heard the rumbling of the waves of that ocean but did not dive into it. A brahmachari once said to me, one who goes beyond Kedar cannot keep his body alive. Likewise, a man cannot preserve his body after attaining Brahmajnana. The body drops off in 21 days. There was an infinite field beyond a high wall. Four friends tried to find out what was beyond the wall. Three of them, one after the other, climbed the wall, saw the field, burst into loud laughter, and dropped to the other side. These three could not give any information about the field. Only the fourth man came back and told people about it. He is like those who retain their bodies even after attaining Brahmajnana in order to teach others. Divine incarnations belong to this class. Parvati was born as the daughter of a king Himalaya. After her birth, she revealed to the king her various divine forms. The father said, well, daughter, you have shown me all these forms, that is nice, but you have another aspect which is Dharma. Please show me that. Father, replied Parvati, if you seek the knowledge of Dharma, then renounce the world and live in the company of holy men. But King Himalaya insisted. Thereupon Parvati revealed her Brahma form, and immediately the king fell down unconscious. All that I have just said belongs to the realm of reasoning. Brahma alone is real and the world illusory. That is reasoning. And everything but Brahma is like a dream. But this is an extremely difficult path. To one who follows it, even the divine play in the world becomes like a dream and appears unreal. His eye also vanishes. The followers of this path do not accept the divine incarnation. It is very difficult path. The lovers of God should not hear much of such reasoning. That is why God incarnates himself as man and teaches people the path of devotion. He exhorts people to cultivate self-surrender to God. Following the path of devotion, one realizes everything through His grace, both knowledge and supreme wisdom. God sports in this world. He is under the control of His devotee. Shama, the Divine Mother, is herself tied by the cord of the love of her devotee. Sometimes God becomes the magnet and the devotee the needle, and sometimes the devotee becomes the magnet and the God the needle. The devotee attracts God to him. God is the beloved of his devotee and is under his control. According to one school, the gopis of Vrindavan, like Yasoda, had believed in the formless God in their previous births, but they did not derive any satisfaction from this belief. That's why later on they enjoyed so much bliss in the company of Sri Krishna in the Vrindavan episode of his life. One day Krishna said to the gopis, "Come along, I shall show you the abode of the eternal. Let us go to the Jamuna for a bath." As they dived into the water of the river, they at once saw Goloka. Next they saw the indivisible light. Thereupon Yasoda exclaimed, "O Krishna, we don't care for these things anymore. We would like to see you in your human form. I want to take you in my arms and feed you." God and His devotee. So, the greatest manifestation of God is through His incarnations. The devotee should worship and serve an incarnation of God as long as he lives in a human form body. At the break of day, he disappears into the secret chamber of his house. God manifesting himself as living beings. Not all by any means can recognize an incarnation of God. Assuming a human body, the incarnation falls victim to disease, grief, hunger, thirst, and all such things like ordinary mortals. Rama wept for Sita, Brahma weeps and trapped in the snare of the five elements. It is said in the Purana that God in his incarnation as the soul lived happily with his young ones even after the destruction of Hiranyaksha. As the soul, he nursed them and forgot all about his abode in heaven. At last Shiva killed the soul body with his trident, and God, laughing aloud, went to his own abode. In the afternoon, Bhavanath arrived. Rakhal and Harish and other devotees were in the room. Master to Bhavanath, to love an incarnation of God, that is enough. Ah, What ecstatic love the gopis had for Krishna. Sri Ramakrishna began to sing, assuming the attitude of the gopis. O Krishna, you are the soul of my soul. Then he sang, I am not going home, O friend, for there it is hard for me to chant my Krishna's name. And again, O friend, that day I stood at my door as you were going to the woods. Continuing, the master said, when Krishna suddenly disappeared in the act of dancing and playing with gopis, they were beside themselves with grief. Looking at tree, they said, O tree, you must be a great hermit. You must have seen Krishna. Otherwise, why do you stand there motionless as if absorbed in samadhi? Looking at the earth covered with green grass, they said, O earth, you must have seen Krishna. Otherwise, why does your hair stand on end? You must have enjoyed the thrill of his touch. Looking at the Madhvi creeper, they said, O Madhvi, give us back our Madhva. The gopis were intoxicated with ecstatic love for Krishna. Akrura came to Vrindavan to take Krishna and Balrama to Mathura. When they announced the chariot, when they mounted the chariot, the gopis clung to the wheels. They would not let the chariot move. Saying this, Sri Ramakrishna sang, assuming the attitude of Akrura. Hold not the chariot's wheels. Is it the wheels that make it move? The mover of its wheels is Krishna, by whose will the worlds are moved. Master, is it the wheels that make it move? By whose will the worlds are moved? The driver moves the chariot at his master's bidding. I feel deeply touched by these lines. Sunday, December 23, 1883. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Sri Ramakrishna was seated on the southwest porch of his room with Rakhal, Latu, and Harish and some other devotees. M had now been 9 days with the master at Dakshineshwar. Earlier in the morning, Manu Mohan had arrived from Kona, Konnagar on his way to Calcutta. Hazrat was present. A Vaishnava was singing. Referring to one of the songs, Sri Ramakrishna said, I did not enjoy that song very much. The songs of the earlier writers seem to me to have more of the right spirit. Once I sang for Nangata at the Panchavati, two arms, O man, death storms your house in battle array. I sang another, O mother, I have no one else to blame. Alas, I sink in the well these very hands have dug. Nangata, the Vedantist, was a man of profound knowledge. The song moved him to tears through the though he did not understand its meaning. Padamlochan also wept when I sang the songs of Ram Prasad about the Divine Mother, and he was truly a great Pandit. After the midday meal, Sri Ramakrishna rested a few minutes in his room. M was sitting on the floor. The master was delighted to hear the music that was being played in the Nahabat. He then explained to M that Brahma alone has become the universe and all living beings. Master, referring to a certain place, someone One said to me, "Nobody sings the name of God there. It has no holy atmosphere." No sooner did he say this than I perceived that it was God alone who had become all living beings. They appeared as countless bubbles or reflections in the ocean of Satchitananda. Again, I find sometimes that living beings are like so many pills made of indivisible consciousness. Once I was on my way to Burdwan from Kamarpukur. At one place I ran to the meadow to see how living beings are sustained. I saw ants crawling there. It appeared to me that every place was filled with consciousness. Hajra entered the room and sat on the floor. Master, again I perceive that living beings are like different flowers with various layers of petals. They are also revealed to me as bubbles, some big, some small. Master's childlike mood. While describing in this way the vision of different divine forms, the Master went into an ecstatic state and said, "I have become, I am here." Uttering these words, he went into Samadhi. His body was motionless. He remained in that state a long time and then gradually regained partial consciousness of the world. He began to laugh like a boy and pace the room. His eyes radiated bliss as if he had seen a wondrous vision. His gaze was not fixed on any particular object, and his face beamed with joy. Still pacing the room, the master said, "I saw the Paramahamsa who stayed under the banyan tree, walking thus with just such a smile. Am I too in that state of mind?" He sat on the small couch and engaged in conversation with the Divine Mother. "Master, I do not even care to know, Mother, may I have pure love for thy lotus feet." 2m. One attains this state immediately after freeing oneself of all grief and desire. To the Divine Mother, thou hast done away with my worship. Please see, Mother, that I do not give up all desire. Mother, the Paramahamsa is but a child. Doesn't a child need a mother? Therefore, thou art the mother and I am the child. How can the child live without the mother? Sri Ramakrishna was talking to the Divine Mother in a voice that would have melted even a stone. Again again he addressed her, saying, "Mere knowledge of Advaita, I spit on it. Thou does thou dost exist as long as thou dost keep the ego in me. The Paramahamsa is but a child. Does not a child need a mother?" And sat there speechless and looked at the divine manifestation in the Master. He said to himself, "The Master is an ocean of mercy that knows no motive. He has kept himself in the state of a Paramahamsa that he might, as a teacher, awaken the spiritual consciousness of myself and other earnest souls." And further thought, the Master says, "Advaita Chaitanya Nityananda." That is to say, through the knowledge of the non-dual Brahma, one attains consciousness and enjoys eternal bliss. The Master has not only attained the knowledge of non-duality, but it is in a state of eternal bliss. He is always drunk with ecstatic love for the Mother of the Universe. With folded hands, Hazra looked at the master and said every now every now and then, how blessed you are, how blessed you are. Master to Hazra, but you have hardly any faith. You simply live here to add to the play like Jatila and Kutila. In the afternoon and paced the temple garden alone. He was deeply absorbed in the thought of the master and was pondering the master's words concerning the attainment of the exalted state of the Paramahamsa. After the elimination of the grief and desire, M said to himself, who is this Sri Ramakrishna acting as my teacher? Has God embodied himself for our welfare? The Master himself says that none but an incarnation can come down to the phenomenal plane from the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Monday, December 24, 1883. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Sri Ramakrishna and M were talking together in the pine grove at the northern end of the temple garden. This was the 11th day of M's stay with the master. It was winter. The sun had just risen. The river was flowing north with the tide. Not far off could be seen the bell tree where the master had practiced great spiritual austerities. Sri Ramakrishna faced the east as he talked to his disciple and told him about the knowledge of Dharma. Master, the formless God is real, and equally real is God with form. Nagata used to instruct me about the nature of Satchitananda Brahma. He would say that it is like an infinite ocean, water everywhere, to the right, left, above, and below. Water enveloped in water. It is the water of the great cause, motionless. Waves spring up when it becomes active. Its activities are creation, preservation, and destruction. Again, he used to say that Burma is where reason comes to stop. There is the instance of camphor, nothing remains after it is burnt, not even a trace of ash. Dharma is beyond mind and speech. A salt dole entered the ocean to measure its depth, but it did not return to tell others how deep the ocean was. It melted in the ocean itself. The rishis once said to Rama, O Rama, sages like Bhardwaj may very well call you an incarnation of God, but we cannot do that. We adore the word Dharma. We do not want the human form of God. Rama smiled and went away, pleased with their adoration. Different manifestation of the Absolute. But the Nitya and the Leela are the two aspects of the same reality. As I have said before, it is like the roof and the steps leading to it. The Absolute plays in many ways, as Ishvara, as the gods, as man, and as the universe. The incarnation is the play of the Absolute as man. Do you know how the Absolute plays as man? It is like the rushing down of water from a big roof through a pipe. The power of Satchitananda Nay. Satchit Ananda itself descends through the conduit of a human form as water descends through the pipe. Only 12 sages, Bhardava and the others, recognized Rama as an incarnation of God. Not everyone can recognize an incarnation. It is God alone who incarnates himself as man to teach people the ways of love and knowledge. Well, what do you think of me? Once my father went to Gaya. There Raghuveer said to him in a dream, I shall be born as your son. Thereupon my father said to him, O Lord, I am a poor Brahmin. How shall I be able to serve you? Don't worry about it. Raghuveer replied, It will be taken care of. My sister Hridaya's mother used to worship my feet with flowers and sandal paste. One day I placed my foot on her head and said to her, You will die in Banaras. Once Mathur Babu said to me, Father, there is nothing inside you but God. Your body is like an empty shell. It may look from outside like a pumpkin, but inside there is nothing, neither flesh nor seed. Once I saw you as someone moving with a veil on. Master's vision of Gauranga. To M. I am shown everything beforehand. Once I saw Gauranga and his devotees singing Kirtan in the Panchavati. I think I saw Balram there and you too. I wanted to know the experiences of Gauranga and was shown them at Shama Bazar in our native district. A crowd gathered, they even climbed the trees and the walls. They stayed with me day and night. For 7 days I had no privacy whatever. Thereupon I said to the Divine Mother, Mother, I have had enough of it. I am at peace now. I shall have to be born once more. Therefore I am not going all knowledge. I am not giving all knowledge to my companions. With a smile, suppose I give you all knowledge. Will you then come to me again so willingly? I recognized you on hearing you read the Chaitanya Bhagavat. You are my own. The same substance like father and son. All of you are coming here again. When you pull one part of the Kalmi creeper, all the branches and sun, all the branches come towards you. You are relative like brothers. Suppose Rakhal, Harish and the others had gone to pray and you were there too, would you live separately? Parable of the grass-eating tiger. Before you came here, you did not know who you were. Now you will know it is God who, as the Guru, makes one know. Nangta told the story of the tigress and the herd of goats. Once a tigress attacked a herd of goats. A hunter saw her from a distance and killed her. The tigress was pregnant and gave birth to a cub as she expired. The cub began to grow in the company of the goats. At first it was nursed by a sea goat, and later on, as it grew bigger, it began to eat grass and bleat like the goats. Gradually, the cub became a big tiger, but still it ate grass and bleated. When attacked by the other animals, it would run away like the goats. One day, a fierce looking tiger attacked the herd. It was amazed to see a tiger in the herd eating grass and running away with the goats at its approach. It left the goats and caught hold of the grass-eating tiger, which began to bleat and try to run away. But the fierce tiger dragged it to the water and said, "Now look at your face in the water. You see, you have the pot face of a tiger. It is exactly like mine." Next, it pressed a piece of meat into its mouth. At first, the grass eating tiger refused to eat the meat. Then it got the taste of the meat and relished it. At last, the fierce tiger said to the grass eater, "What a disgrace! You lived with goats and ate grass like them." And the other was really ashamed of itself. Eating grass is like enjoying women and gold. To bleat and run away like a goat is to behave like an ordinary man. Going away with the new tiger is like taking shelter with the Guru, who awakens one's spiritual consciousness and recognizing him alone as one's relative. To see one's face rightly is to know one's real self. Sri Ramakrishna stood up. There was silence all around, dis- disturbed only by the gentle rustling of the pine needles and the murmuring of the Ganges. The master went to the Panchavati and then to his room, talking all the while with them. The disciple followed him fascinated. At the Panchavati, Sri Ramakrishna touched with his forehead the raised platform around the banyan tree. This was the place of his intense spiritual discipline, where he had wept bitterly for the vision of the Divine Mother, where he had held intimate communion with her, and where he had seen many divine forms. The master and M passed the cluster of bakul trees and came to the Nahabat. Hazra was there. The master said to him, "Don't eat too much and give up this craze for outer cleanliness. People with a craze do not attain knowledge. Follow conventions only as much as necessary. Don't go to excess." The master entered his room and sat on the couch. Sri Ramakrishna was resting after his midday meal when Surendra, Ram, and other devotees arrived from Calcutta. It was about 1 o'clock. While M was strolling alone under the pine trees, Haris came there and told him that the master wanted him in his room. Someone was going to read from the Shiva Samhita, a book containing instructions about yoga and six centers. M entered the room and saluted the master. The devotees were seated on the floor, but no one was reading the book. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to the devotees. "Master, the gopis cherished ecstatic love for Krishna. There are two elements in such love: I-ness and myness. I-ness is the feeling that Krishna will be ill if I do not serve him. In this attitude, the devotee does not look upon his idol as God. Myness is to feel that the beloved is my own." The gopis had such a feeling of myness towards Krishna that they would place their subtle bodies under his feet lest his soul should get hurt. Yasoda remarked, "I don't understand your Chintamani Krishna. To me he is simply Gopala." The gopis also said, "Oh, where is Krishna, our beloved? Where is Krishna, our sweetheart?" They were not conscious of his being God. It is like a small child saying, "My daddy." If someone says to the child, "No, no, he is not your daddy," The child says, yes, he is my daddy. God incarnated as man acts like a man. God incarnating himself as man behaves exactly like a man. That's why it is difficult to recognize an incarnation. When God becomes man, he is exactly like man. He has the same hunger, thirst, disease, grief, and sometimes even fear. Rama was stricken with grief for Sita. Krishna carried on his head the shoes and wooden stool of his father Nanda. In the theatre, when an actor comes on the stage in the role of a holy man, he behaves like one and not like the actor who is talking the part of the king. He plays his own role. Once an impersonator dressed himself as a world-renouncing monk. Pleased with the correctness of his disguise, some rich people offered him a rupee. He did not accept the money but went away shaking his head. Afterwards, he removed his disguise and appeared in his usual dress. Then he said to the rich people, please give me the rupee. They replied, why you went away refusing our present? Why do you ask for it now? The man said, but then I was in the role of a holy man. I could not accept money. Likewise, when God becomes man, he behaves exactly like a man. At Vrindavan, one sees many places associated with Krishna's life. Surendra, we were there during the holy days. Visitors were continually pestered for money. The priest and others asked for it continually. We told them that we were going to leave for Calcutta the next day, but we fled from Vrindavan that very night. Master, what is that? Shame. You said you would leave the place at the next day and ran away that very day. What a shame. Surendra embraced. Here and there we saw the Babajis in the woods practicing spiritual discipline in solitude. Master, did you give them anything? Surendra, no sir, master. That was not proper of you. One should give something to monks and devotees. Those who have the means should help such persons when they meet them. Master's reminiscences of Mathura and Vrindavan. I went to Vrindavan with Mathur Babu. The moment I came to the Dhruva Ghat at Mathura, in a flash I saw Vasudeva crossing the Jamuna with Krishna in his arms. One evening I was taking a stroll on the beach of the river. There were small thatched huts on the beach and big plum trees. It was the cow dust hour. The cows were returning from the pasture, raising dust with their hoofs. I saw them fording the river. Then came some cowherd boys crossing the river with their cows. No sooner did I behold this scene than I cried out, O Krishna, where are you? And became unconscious. I wanted to visit Shama Kunda and Radha Kunda. So Mathur Babu sent me there in a palanquin. We had a long way to go. Food was put in the palanquin. While going over the meadow, I was overpowered with emotion and wept, O Krishna, I find everything the same, only you are not here. This is the very meadow where you tended the cows. Here they followed me on foot. I was bathed in tears. I could not ask the bearers to stop the palanquin. At Shyama Kunda and Radha Kunda, I saw the holy men living in small mud huts, facing away from the road, lest their eyes should fall on men. They were engaged in spiritual discipline. One should visit the 12 grove. I went into Samadhi at the sight of the image of Banku Vihari. Banku Vihari. In that state, I wanted to touch it. I did not want to visit Govindaji twice. At Mathura, I dreamed of Krishna as the cowherd boy. Hriday and Mathur Babu had the same dream. To Surendra, you have both yoga and bhoga. There are different classes of sages, the Brahmrishi, the Devrasi, and the Rajarshi. Sukadeva is an example of the Brahmrishi. He did not keep even one book with him. An example of the Devrasi is Narada. Janaka was a Rajarshi devoted to selfless work. The devotee of the Divine Mother attains dharma and moksha. He enjoys artha and kama as well. Once I saw you in a vision as the child of the Divine Mother. You have both yoga and bhoga, otherwise your countenance would look dry. The man who renounces all looks dry. Once I saw a devotee of the Divine Mother at the bathing ghat on the Ganges. He was eating his meal and at the same time worshipping the mother. He looked on himself as the mother's child. But it is not good to have much money. I find that Jadoo Malik is drowned in worldliness. It is because he has too much money. Nabin Yogi too has both yoga and bhoga. I saw him and his son waving the fan before the image of the Divine Mother at the time of the Durga Puja. Surendra, sir, why can't I meditate? Master, you remember God and think of Him, don't you? Surendra, yes, sir, I go to sleep repeating the word Mother. Master, that is very good. It will be enough if you remember God and think of Him. Sri Ramakrishna had taken Surendra's responsibilities on himself. Why should Surendra worry about anything? It was evening. The master was sitting on the floor of this room with the devotees. He was talking to them about yoga and the six centers. These are described in the Shiva Samhita. Master, Ida, Pingla, and Susmana are the three principal nerves. All the lotuses are located in the Susmana. They are formed of consciousness like a tree made of wax, the branches, twigs, fruits, and so forth of all wax. The Kundalini lies in the lotus of the Mooladhara. That lotus has four petals. The primordial energy resides in all bodies as the Kundalini. She is like a sleeping snake coiled up of the form of a sleeping snake having the Mooladhara for her abode. To end, the Kundalini is speedily awakened if one follows the path of bhakti. God cannot be seen unless he is awakened. Sing earnestly and secretly in solitude. Waken, O Mother, O Kundalini, whose nature is bliss eternal. Thou art the serpent coiled in sleep in the lotus of Mooladhara. Ram Prasad achieved perfection through singing. One obtains the vision of God if one sings with yearning heart, and great grief and distress of mind disappear if one has these experiences but once. At this point, I conclude this video. Please like, comment, and share the video and subscribe the channel. Namaskar, my dear friends. Next video number 19 will start with proper time for spiritual unfoldment. Namaskar, my dear friends. Namaskar.